Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. You heard of the success of React, Vue, and Angular, right? Well, Svelte is the new JavaScript tech that most people feel will be just as important as these three, if not more. The reason is that Svelte is elegant, it has an amazingly beautiful modern syntax, and it compiles everything you write to pure JavaScript. That means it's easy to code in and blazingly fast at runtime. So the best of both worlds. It's also extremely intuitive and easy to learn. In fact, I'm going to teach you a huge portion of Svelte in this course in less than 2 hours. I'm Dr. Nauman and I'll be your instructor for this course. I have a PhD in security and a postdoc from Max Planck Institute for Software Systems Germany, one of the world's leading research institutes. I have more than 2 decades of programming and teaching experience, both in the front-end and back-end. I use that experience to bring Svelte to you in the most efficient, time-saving way possible. In this course, we will create 2 projects in Svelte. First will be pure front-end, where you'll see the Svelte approach to creating front-ends through components. I do not assume any knowledge about other frameworks such as React or Vue, but if you do know them, you'll see why Svelte is so much better. In the second project, we will cover a different approach towards data sharing between components and also connect our front-end to a dummy backend. In this way, you will learn the best practices used in production instead of just toy examples disconnected from the actual data stores, as is the case in most other tutorials out there. Once you are through the 2 projects, you will not only be able to create Svelte projects on your own, you will also be a front-end guru who is an expert in this latest and greatest front-end technology. Svelte on your resume will definitely mark you as being on the cutting edge of web development practices. What's more, this course comes with my guarantee of exceptional support. I answer all questions within 24 hours. That, coupled with the 30-day money-back guarantee, means zero risk for you. So enroll now and let's get started with Svelte. Hi, and welcome to the course. Before we get started, please remember that if you have any trouble at all, if you get stuck with anything in the course, please do post in the Q&A and I will try to answer as quickly as possible. With that out of the way, let's get started with the course. So this course is about Svelte. You can think of Svelte as a front-end framework, but it's not really a framework. The word Svelte, by the way, itself really means elegant, and Svelte is very elegant in the way it approaches the whole front-end business. How does it work? It takes the Svelte directives and all of the benefits of a framework like React or Vue or Angular, all of those combined, but instead of putting all of that heavy load on the front-end browser, it takes a slightly different approach. It takes whatever directives you have, whatever components you have, all of that, and compiles that on the server one time and creates a single file, bundle.js. And that bundle file is sent to the browser at runtime, and that is all the browser will see. So when you write with Svelte, the browser is going to be looking at pure JavaScript, which is going to be extremely efficient. No virtual DOMs, no components, nothing going on. All of that is going to be pure JavaScript, and that makes it really efficient while still giving you the flexibility of structuring your code in a very clean, elegant manner. So that is what Svelte is. It makes a lot more sense when you start working with it. So I don't assume that you worked with React before, and I don't assume that you worked with any other framework before. You do need to have a little bit of understanding of JavaScript, especially promises and async await. But even if you don't, the code is going to make sense because that is how elegant Svelte is. It's going to make everything look very straightforward once you start working with it. So with that out of the way, let's get started with the actual content of the course. In this course, we're going to create 2 projects with Svelte, and the rationale for that is each of those is going to focus on one aspect of Svelte. So in the first project, we are going to create a to-do list, which is going to look something like this. Well, exactly like this. We are going to have some to-dos. We can add to-dos by clicking on this and clicking on the plus. That will go over here. And we can complete to-dos by clicking on this check mark, and we can delete to-dos by clicking on this trash icon. Our framework is going to keep track of how many total to-dos we have and how many are yet to be completed. So that is going to be the basic structure. We're going to take a top-down approach. So what that means is instead of creating each component individually and trying to fit all of those pieces together, we are going to start with the whole thing. So this whole thing is currently written in an HTML CSS template. So typically you're either going to have the design done for you by somebody else, or you're going to first create the design and then move on to the actual coding of the JavaScript and the framework. So we're not going to focus on this. I'm going to provide this file to you so that you can start working with this immediately. So take this HTML file, run it in a browser, and it looks like this, right? So this is our starting point. Obviously, since this is just HTML, it doesn't click. it doesn't do anything. If we try to add a to-do, it doesn't do anything. So we're going to add all of that using Svelte. So let's first go ahead and install Svelte and move this to our Svelte project. Installation of Svelte itself is very easy. If you head over to the official Svelte page, it gives you a method of cloning a Git repository, which essentially gives you the whole Svelte. So we're going to use dgit, which essentially is going to go to this Git repo and create a Svelte project in this folder for you. Within that, if you do npm install, Svelte is going to be set up automatically. Extremely easy to set it up. So let's go ahead and do this now. But obviously before doing that, because it's using Node, we are going to have to install Node. If you're on Windows, head over to nodejs.org and simply download the LTS version of Node from over here. It says Mac OS over here because I'm on the Mac right now, but for you it will say download for Windows, and you simply download the long-term support version and set it up using the provided installer. That's all there is to it. If you're on Mac or Linux, I recommend that you go with NVM. For that, you simply head over to the nvm-sh repo on GitHub. In the installing and updating, you have this single command over here. Simply run that and NVM will be installed. After that, if you're on Windows, everything is set up. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can use the NVM to install Node. So you will say nvm install --lts. That is going to install the latest long-term support version of Node for you. And then you say nvm use --lts, and that is going to allow you to use the latest LTS version of Node. So that is done, out of the way. So make sure that Node is working, and then go ahead to any directory that you like, and let's go ahead and start Svelte. So for this, we are going to do npx dgit svelte.js/template, and we are going to clone this in svelte-to-do. So svelte.js/template, svelte-to-do, this is going to dgit it, bring down everything and put it in svelte-to-do. So svelte-to-do. Here we have to say npm install, and that is going to set up everything for us. All the dependencies will be downloaded and set up. This works out of the box, does take a little bit of time, but once this is done, we'll be through. All right, so that is done. We can say npm run dev, and that is going to start a development server for us, and then we can go ahead and open it in the browser. So the application is now available on localhost /8080. Let's go ahead and open this up in our browser, and there is our little hello world. Let's open up the new code in our code editor of choice and see how this works out. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. So if you open up the project in your Visual Studio Code or whatever editor you want, you can go ahead and open app.svelte. So this is where our single page app on Svelte is going to reside. So in app.svelte, we have three portions. We have a script tag, which is going to hold any JavaScript that we associate with this component. We are going to have an HTML component in which we are going to have all the HTML that this component has. And at the bottom, we are going to have a style component. So these are the three main sections in any Svelte component. Here, currently, we have just one component, which is the whole app. So it has a script, which only defines a variable name. Here we have the HTML, which is kind of like a template. It's going to be rendered using JavaScript, but we don't have to worry about that. That's the whole beauty of Svelte. We look at the pure, clean syntax, and Svelte is going to take care of everything else automatically for us. We don't have to worry about how Svelte does it. So we have a name over here, variable, and hello parenthesis name is going to take care of embedding the value of the variable name into this portion over here. Then we have a tag over here that is not important. Finally, at the end, we have a style, and this style is only going to be applicable on this component. If you have another component residing within this component, this style is not going to be applicable on that. Svelte takes care of that automatically for us. So instead of having a global CSS, we do have a global CSS, which is applied everywhere. But if you have styles which you want to apply to specific components, you can use the style tag within that component's Svelte file. And in that way, you compartmentalize your CSS instead of turning your CSS into a huge big mess in one single file. Okay, so you get CSS compartmentalization as well for free. So this is our style. So we have a main, we have an h1 with red color, which is what you see over here. So you can go ahead and change hello name, remove the exclamation mark, save it, and it has live reload. So it automatically reloads the page and it's updated. This world is coming from our main configuration. So for that, we head over to src main.js. Here we have a prop over here, which is a property. We can change this world to buddy, and this is going to turn it into hello buddy. So this name goes into our app component, which is defined in app.svelte. So we can head over to app.svelte. This name is going to land on this name variable over here, and it's going to be displayed over here. Right? So hopefully that made sense. In the next video, we are going to take this basic app structure and convert it into our to-do so that it at least looks like this, and that is going to be our starting point, after which we're going to turn everything into separate components, compartmentalize them, and then work with all the different interactivity that we want. So once you have everything working until this point, you can move ahead to the next video and start creating your first app on Svelte. At the moment, our app is completely static. It doesn't actually do anything. There is no data flowing around in any of the components. So the first thing that we can do is we can go ahead and introduce the concept of passing data or properties to this first to do. So we already have a to do tag over here, or the component. We are going to add a property to it, so called item text. And this item text is going to be, let's say, first to do. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And we are also going to have completed. That is going to be true. So this task is going to be completed. Okay. Then we are also going to have, if we save this, we're not actually going to see anything because we're not using this in our component. So let's head over to the to-do component now and actually use the item text and complete it. So first, this over here is a way of embedding any JavaScript into your HTML, right? So this is Svelte way of writing JavaScript. So brackets over here, you can put any valid JavaScript here. True is valid JavaScript, so we are putting it over here. Let's go ahead and close these. In our to-do.svelte, we are going to first capture this value that is being passed to us. So we are going to add a script tag over here, and we are going to say export let item text. So this value is going to be passed to us from the outside, and we are going to put this over here. So as before, parenthesis and any JavaScript. So this is item text. Now this item text is coming from this variable over here. It's automatically linked, taken care of by Svelte for you. This item text is the same as this item text, and this item text is getting its value from this guy over here. So if we change this to first, it turns into first. We can go ahead and copy this and change this to second. And now we are going to have a second to do as well. We also need to use the completed variable. For that, we are going to head over here and say export let completed. And for this, we are going to over here add a class. If the value of completed for this to do is true, we want to add a class called completed. Otherwise, we don't want to add that class. So for that, we are again going to have some JavaScript over here, and the JavaScript is going to be if completed, then add the completed class. Otherwise, don't add any class. Okay, so that is going to be the thing over here. So as you can see, both of these are completed, so they have grayed out. We can turn one of these to false, save, and this is no longer completed. As you can see, with just a couple of bits of code, we are getting interactivity and reactivity for free from Svelte. Okay. Also, we want to turn this checkbox into a tick box, which is fa square check class. So here, instead of fa square, we again want to have some JavaScript logic. So if completed, then we want to add fa square check. Otherwise, we want to add fa square. Let's save that. And now, as you can see, this guy over here, and zoom in, this is now checked and this one is not. In todos.svelte, if you change this to false and change this to true, these would switch. Obviously, we need some sort of way of doing this dynamically, but for now, our to-do component is working. It's taking in some value from the outside and it's rendering itself correctly. Okay, so to-do component is able to take the information, but the to-dos, the plural one, it's hard coding its information over here. So what we're going to do now is head over to our app.svelte and basically save our data that we want to work with. It'll make sense when we actually do this. So in our app.svelte, we are going to introduce a new variable over here at the top level. So it's going to be let to-dos is equal to, and it's going to be an array of to-dos with ID 1, text as first, and completed as false. And then we're going to go ahead and copy this. So let's say true, second, 2, and just for good measure, let's add another one as well. Okay, so third, ID is 3. So let's save this. Obviously, they are not displayed over here because we haven't even passed it to the to-dos component. So here we are going to say to-dos is equal to to-dos. Okay, We save this, and this needs to be captured by the to-dos components. Here we are going to say export let to-dos. So this to-dos variable is going to be populated by app.svelte. So these to-dos are going to be passed. These to-dos are going to be passed to this to-dos variable, which is in to-dos component. Okay. Now here we want to loop over this. So instead of hard coding this, let's get rid of one of these. And instead of hard coding it, we want to loop over the to-dos collection. So Svelte provides the each construct. So it's going to be each. What do we want to loop over? To-dos. And each individual to-do is going to be called to-do. So we are going to loop over the to-dos, and we end the loop using /each. So it looks kind of weird, but it starts with #each and ends with /each. Here we want to take the to-dos value and put this as the text. So let's save this, and you can see first, second, and third. Completed is going to be to-do dot completed. Okay, so let's save this. Doesn't work. It should. Let's go ahead and see what might be wrong. So after Svelte completed, I have a typo over here. So completed. So there you go. There you go. Okay, so now this works. So to-dos is passed to the to-dos component, which loops over these, and for each of the to-dos, it creates a to-do component with the proper item text and completed value, which is rendered by the to-do component clearly. So now we have data coming in from app.svelte. So the next step naturally is to allow the user to click on this checkbox over here and mark the to-do as completed or uncompleted. So we're going to do that in the next video. So we've created the interface in the previous video. In this video, we have one very simple objective. We are going to create a data store which is going to hold our data, and we are going to retrieve that data from our all-chits component. That's all. This very simple concept is going to allow you to structure your application and the data around it and the communication with the backend, all of that stuff in a very clean, efficient manner. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is first we're going to create a new folder over here called stores in src. So stores. This folder is going to hold all of our data stores. So at the moment we are going to have just one data store called chit store. So let's create a new file called chit store. This is a basic JavaScript file, not a Svelte file, but a JavaScript file. So let's create that chitstore.js. And here we are going to import a writable store from Svelte. I'll do that and I'll explain what that means. So import writable from svelte/store. A writable store is a store, a data store, from which you can read data and to which you can write data. So let's go ahead and create a store called chitstore. That is going to be a writable. And if you leave it just like that, call it 0 or false, right? So what that means is a chit store is a writable store. You can put anything that you want in it. Even though I've written false over here, it doesn't have to be a Boolean. You can later on put a dictionary or an array or a number, anything into this store later on. That's all there is to it. It's a writable store. You can put stuff in it and you can access it from anywhere in the application. So to do that, let's first go ahead and export this. So export const. This is going to be our exported store and we're going to access it using the chit store name. Let's go to our all chits and actually access this. So in all chits, we are going to import this. So import chit store from ... So that gets us to our src, then store /chitstore.js. Okay, so this is imported. Now what we want to do is we want to subscribe to this chit store. What that means is whenever any changes are made to this chit store, we are going to be informed reactively, automatically via Svelte. Okay, so let's go ahead and subscribe. So this is going to be chitstore.subscribe, and you're going to say that whenever data comes in, so data, what should be done with that data? We should save it in all chits is equal to data. Right, so this is going to be our variable. So all chits. Whenever anything happens in the chit store, any change is made because of this subscription, the data is going to be sent to us, all the new data, and that is going to be saved in all chits. So now all chits is reactive and it's going to respond to any changes in the chit store. Okay, so anybody can write to chit store, but right now only our all chits is subscribed to the chit store, and it's going to be informed whenever any change is made. Right, so there is a little bit of piece missing over here. We'll do that later in the course. So once we have all chits, we want to loop over them. So this is going to be each all chits as chit, and we want to give each chit a chit ID. So chit.id, we're going to define what a chit ID is. We don't have any data right now in our store. We want to enclose this in a div over here. So div class is equal to all chits. It's not all that important, but we do need to enclose our Svelte constants within a div. So let's go ahead and put this /div over here. Okay, so we need to end the each as well. There you go. So now we are looping over this. So you will see that we are getting an error over here, and the error is that I've misspelled the store. So let's go ahead and fix this real quick. So this is stores, not store. Let's save this, and now we don't have an error, but we don't see anything. And the reason for that is there is nothing going on in the store. So let's go ahead and put some data in the store. So in our chit store.ts, instead of false, we are going to put an array of chits. So at the moment, we just have a chit of ID1, which has author, let's say Nauman. Let's move this here. Has the handle of, let's say, @recluse, and has the content of first chit. Let's keep it simple. And let's ignore the likes count for a minute. So this is our store, and now everything is working fine. The reason for the error initially was it was looking for a chit.id, and there was no chit.id over there. Okay, now we want to pass the information that is stored in this chit to this chit, and for that we are going to open up our chit.svelte, and we are going to define some exports. So script export let content, export let author, and export let the author's handle. Okay, we want to use them over here. So here we are going to have the author, here we are going to have @handle. So let's get rid of this as well, and here we are going to have the actual content. So there you go. Now we need to pass this over here. These are all undefined, so we can say content is equal to chit.content. So content will appear. We can say author is equal to chit.author, but this is getting tiresome. So what we can do is we can use the expansion operator, and we can simply say ... chit. That is going to take the whole chit, expand it as a key value pair, and send it to the chit. So now everything works fine. Okay. So this is another syntax. This chit is going to be automatically expanded. Chit.author is going to go into author, chit.content is going to go into content, and chit.handle is going to go into handle. So everything works fine now. As you can see, we are taking this data and we are passing it to the chit component. And where is this data coming from? It's coming from chitstore.js right now over here. So if we add a new ID over here, so let's go ahead and do this. So let's call this ID2 blah. So this appears over here automatically. So now our chit store is providing the data that is required by the whole application. There is going to be only one point in which our data is going to be written to or read from, and that is going to be this chit store. No other place is going to actually hold the data or work with the backend. Okay, so that's really clean. There is a little bit of problem that we missed earlier on, so let's go ahead and fix this. Whenever we subscribe to a store, we want to also make sure that whenever our component is unloaded, we unsubscribe from it. That is essential to save memory and to make sure that your application remains efficient. So for that, we have a very simple method. We are going to import two hooks. So this is going to be onMount and onDestroy. These hooks are called whenever your function is created and destroyed respectively. So we are going to import them from Svelte. And the way this works is we are going to say that we want to subscribe, and this subscribe function is going to return to you another function which you can call if you want to unsubscribe. So this is going to be let chitstore unsub is equal to chitstore.subscribe and so on and so forth. When do we want to call this unsubscribe function? We want to call it when our component is destroyed. Whenever our component is destroyed, we want to unsubscribe. So that is fairly straightforward. We can simply say onDestroy. So this onDestroy is going to take a function from you. That function itself does not take any arguments, and it does something for you. Okay, so what does it do? It simply chitstore unsubs. Okay, so that is it. Nothing is going to change, but because of this onDestroy, your component just became a lot more efficient. Okay. Finally, what about this onMount? This onMount is useful whenever you want to perform some initialization for your component. So we don't need it right now, but if we did, we would say onMount, And here we would also pass it another function, and let's say console.log component mounted, right? So something like that. You can see it. So let's go ahead and do the developer console. So if you clean this up and you reload, you will see component mounted is called. So we don't need the on mount, so let's get rid of this, but let's keep the on destroy. Okay. So because we're running out of space over here, so let's just hide this aside for a while. So let's go to app.svelte and let's just comment out this aside. Now our store is done, our subscription is done, our unsubscription is done. So now we can go ahead and start doing some more interesting stuff with our components in the next video. Our front end is almost done and our store is working perfectly fine. Now we want to connect this to the backend. But before we do that, we need to structure our code in a way that is manageable and scalable. So we don't want to put all the logic of our backend into our chit store. What we want to do instead is to create a separate component of our code base, which is going to be called backend, and there we are going to store the API which is going to be used to communicate with the backend. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new file. In src, let's go ahead and create this folder called backend, and in this backend let's go ahead and create a new file called api.js. So this is going to hold all the communication that is done with the backend. So the first thing we're going to do is create a function which is going to simulate the fetching of chits from the backend. For now we're going to hard code it, but we're going to make it actually get the data from the backend in one of the future videos. So export function, we're going to call this function fetch chits. Sounds like a tongue twister. Anyway, so fetch chits, and we're going to console.log. We're going to put a b over here for backend, and we're going to say fetching all chits. Okay, and we're going to return two chits. So let's see, ID of 1, author, let's say Rahman, handle @recluse. The content is going to be first and likes will be 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this. So ID2, let's call this blah, and everything else can remain fine. Okay, we haven't called this function right now, so it doesn't make a difference. Let's create another function as well. So export function inc likes, which takes an ID, and here we're going to say console.log b incrementing likes. So incrementing likes for ID. Okay, doesn't do anything right now. So now let's head over to our chit store and actually call these functions. So here we had this writable which was hard coding some data. So let's not hard code this data anymore. Let's instead call the fetch chits function, which is going to return the chits to us. So let's go ahead and import that. So import inc likes and fetch chits from /backend/api.js. Okay, so we save this, and first and the blah first are coming along over here. Okay, similarly in our like chit function, before returning the past chits, we want to call the inc like function with this ID. So our chit store does not change much at all. Everything, all the logic is going to be in api.js, right? So if we do the like, we are getting an error over here. So let's go ahead and see what that is. So inc like is not defined because it's inc likes. Right, so inc, I should probably make it inc like, right? So inc like, not inc likes. It's a single like that we're incrementing. Okay, and then click. Right, incrementing likes 1. So everything is working perfectly fine now. Okay, we're calling the backend, fetching data, and this. Now what we want to do is create an actual backend. Go ahead and modify our functions over here so that instead of hard coding this return, it's going to go and talk to the backend and return the values that are sent by the backend. And the inc likes is also going to communicate with the backend and update it. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a dummy backend server in the next video and then communicate with the backend using our api.js.